Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Just checking the sound. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa 'allimna ma yanfa'una wa zidna 'ilma. Allahumma faqihna fid din. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to bless us with beneficial knowledge and to give us an increase in knowledge and to give us an understanding of this great religion of His, Al-Islam. Insha'Allah, today we will be continuing with our session on stories from the lives of the prophets of Allah Azza wa Jal. And so some people, they may be a bit confused. And so what it is one Friday will be stories from the lives of the prophets, and the next Friday will be gems from the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we will alternate between these two. Last Friday we had taken we had taken a story from the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, talking about his humility and some of the different stories related to that. This week we're taking stories from the lives of different prophets, and we're actually continuing a session that we had already started. We had spoken about Musa alayhi salam, and inshallah we're going to continue talking about that. And then the next week, as we said, we will alternate between stories from the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and stories from the lives of other prophets who were also sent by Allah Azza wa Jal. And the point in all of this is, insha'Allah, for us to see these examples that we have in front of us, given to us by Allah Azza wa Jal. Their stories are recorded in the Quran as well. And so hopefully we will be able to benefit from these stories, and instead of aspiring to be regular people who might be rich or might be successful financially, or their businesses might be successful, also let's try to emulate the people who, insha'Allah, if we do emulate, we can then be from the people of Jannah, the best of people. And so in the first part, when we were covering the story of Musa alayhi salam, we had covered some of the virtues that are mentioned about Musa alayhi salam in our texts, whether they be in the Quran or whether they be some things mentioned by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we also spoke about the circumstances that Musa alayhi salam was born into, and the oppression that the Banu Israel faced at the hands of Fir'aun and his people. And we had said that the reason for this was because when Yusuf alayhi salam had initially come into Egypt, and he was then afforded this great position in their society, the locals of that area, they got jealous, and eventually in battles they were able to defeat Banu Israel. And we had said Banu Israel are the children of Yaqub alayhi salam. All the tribes of all the tribes of Banu Israel were basically the children of Yaqub alayhi salam, the 12 sons of his, and the progeny that emerged from those 12 sons of his. And so now, after the locals of Egypt were able to overpower the Banu Israel, they enslaved the Banu Israel, and they tortured them and humiliated them, and they did all sorts of oppression against them. And then there was a vision that was seen that there would be someone from amongst Banu Israel who would overthrow the Fir'aun. And so Fir'aun, he got very scared. He wanted to hold on to his power that he had. And so he ordered for all the sons to be killed, so that that boy who was supposed to be born would be killed. And that boy, as we all know, was Musa alayhi salam. And in the previous session we spoke about how Allah Azza wa Jal protected him, and at the same time he was able to reunite the mother of Musa alayhi salam with her child. And in this way Allah Azza wa Jal also fulfilled his promise to her, and now he was being raised in the household of Fir'aun. And so despite the fact that Fir'aun had been killing all the male children of Banu Israel who were born, he was doing this to kill Musa alayhi salam. And despite that, Musa alayhi salam emerges from within the household of Fir'aun. And this shows us that when something is written, when Allah Azza wa Jal intends for something to happen, or wills for something to happen, that there is nothing that can come in the way of that, and that it is always Allah Azza wa Jal who is in control over everything. And through this we also learn to rely and put our trust in Allah while remaining patient, as is the case of all the prophets and all the righteous people. They have their trust in Allah. They do what is being asked of them to do by Allah Azza wa Jal, and at the same time they remain patient with whatever it may be that they face. Today, inshallah, we'll continue with the story of Musa alayhi salam as he grows up in that society. And we had mentioned that he was in a very weak state. We had mentioned there was a threat looming on him when he was born that he might be killed, and then he's put into the water, and he ends up in the household of Fir'aun. All show how weak Musa alayhi salam was, and how Allah Azza wa Jal was able to protect him. And even now, despite the fact that he is someone who is respected in the society because he grew up in the household of Fir'aun, the people still know that he is from Banu Israel. They still know that he's not one of them. And so he's still in a weak state in that regard. And so, subhanAllah, the other thing that is something for us to ponder about is that despite the fact that he grew up in the household of Fir'aun, he still emerges as one of the 5 greatest messengers sent by Allah Azza wa Jal. He is growing up in the household of one of the most evil people, and yet Allah Azza wa Jal is able to place that light of guidance in his heart. And so it is to Allah Azza wa Jal that we turn to for guidance, and we seek his help, and we ask him to continue to keep us upon this guidance, as well as our, insha'Allah, our progeny after us. And so Allah Azza wa Jal, he says in the Quran then that when Musa alayhi salam, he matured, when he was more mature, Allah Azza wa Jal, he gave him wisdom as well as knowledge. And so now what happens is, one day Musa alayhi salam, he goes out into the city at a time when people were asleep. There aren't many people out on the streets. And he saw 2 people fighting. One of them was a person from Banu Israel, his people, and the other was from the locals. He was from the people of Fir'aun. And so this person from Banu Israel, when he sees Musa alayhi salam, he calls out to him for help. And Musa alayhi salam, seeing that no one else was there to help him, he rushed to him And he, just with one hit, he just struck the other man once, and he killed the man without actually intending to do so. And as soon as that happened, Musa alayhi salam was filled with regret, and he made tawbah to Allah Azza wa Jal. And so then he said to Allah Azza wa Jal, he said, "My Lord, for the favor you have bestowed upon me, I will never be an assistant to the criminals." He didn't want to be involved in any act of injustice. This was something that was done by mistake. He was trying to save someone. And so the first thing that he was trying to do was actually something virtuous, trying to help those who are oppressed. He saw this person in need of help. He was, being beaten up. And in trying to help this individual, by mistake, he kills the person from the people of Fir'aun. And now Musa alayhi salam, he got scared. He hadn't meant to kill the man, but at the same time, he knew that he was from Banu Israel, and the other man was from the actual locals. And so Fir'aun and his people, they would be furious with this. And all he was trying to do was help someone he considered helpless and being oppressed. So now that he's worried about himself, he is going about in the city, looking over his shoulder, making sure no one's following him. And then a person, he's realized that he's killed a person from the people of Fir'aun. And they would want justice for this, despite the fact that Fir'aun and his people killed countless people from Banu Israel. We mentioned how they would slaughter all the children, the male children who would be born. That's not a big deal to them. But because it's someone from amongst themselves, because it's an individual from their camp, now they would want to exact revenge. And so now he is going about the city very carefully, looking out for himself, making sure that, no harm comes upon him. And then the next day, Musa alayhi salam sees the same man from Banu Israel, the person he had helped. And once again, he's involved in a fight with a different person this time. And he once again calls upon Musa alayhi salam for help. And so Musa alayhi salam, he realizes that he's a troublemaker, and he says that to him. He says, you're just someone who's a troublemaker. You're just someone who's not a good person. Because, if a person constantly gets in trouble, there comes a point where you come to realize that it's not just that trouble finds him. This person is the one who seeks out trouble and gets in trouble. They're the ones who are doing bad, because of which there are negative consequences upon this person. And so Musa alayhi salam, he was about to strike the man from the people of Fir'aun, and then the man quickly called out, and he said to Musa alayhi salam, "O Musa, do you intend to kill me as you killed someone yesterday?" Now this shows Musa alayhi salam that the news has spread. And so the man, he says to him, "You only want to be a tyrant in the land. You only want to be someone who oppresses. You don't want to be one of those who try to make things right." And so Musa alayhi salam, he was taken aback, and so he didn't strike this man. And then there was a man who came from the other side of the city. He rushed to Musa alayhi salam, and he said to Musa alayhi salam that the authorities, the people of Fir'aun, they were now talking about killing Musa alayhi salam. And so he advised him to flee. Now Musa alayhi salam, he's always lived in Egypt. He's only lived here. Yes, originally they're not from Egypt, the Banu Israel. As we mentioned, Yaqub alayhi salam, he was not in Egypt. They were in the area that's in northwest Arabia, north of that area, in the Sham region, which also includes Palestine and the other regions there. And now that it was Yusuf alayhi salam who ended up in Egypt through the story that inshallah we will mention later on, even though we did briefly cover it in the intro when talking about Musa alayhi salam. But this is the only place he's known. Where is he supposed to run to? So he starts running towards a city called Midian. And Midian is a place which is in northwestern Arabia as well. So just, southeast of that region, the Palestinian region, that is where Midian was. And this isn't a short journey. Coming from Egypt, having to cross all that land, he ends up in Midian. And you can imagine how exhausted he is and how scared he is. And, the state of fear that was there in his heart, having fled what he considered and who were actually oppressive people. They were now trying to kill Musa alayhi salam. The army of Fir'aun was unable to kill him as a child when he was born, and now they are trying to kill him once again. And so Musa alayhi salam, now in this state, he gets to Midian, having fled the Copts of Egypt, and he arrives at the well that is in Midian. And once he gets to that well, he sees that there are a group of people who are watering their flocks, their sheep and the other animals that they would graze. They've brought their animals to the water to basically get them water. And at the same time, he also sees that on the side, there are two women just with their own flock, and they're trying to hold back their own flock from the water. And so Musa alayhi salam, when he sees this, he approaches the two women and he asks them what the issue was. And they replied and said that they would wait until the men were done after they had finished watering their own flocks. Then the women would get their turn; they would be able to water their flock. And Musa alayhi salam, obviously, he must have wondered, why isn't your brother or your father or someone helping you? And so they said that our father is an old man; he's not capable of doing so. In old age, we are the ones who are left with this task to water the animals and to take care of the animals. And so Musa alayhi salam, he was obviously a great and noble person. He was very strong, as we had mentioned. Just one blow of his was able to kill. Just one strike of his was able to kill the man from the people of Fir'aun. When we talk about knockout power, whether it's a boxer, whether it's a fighter, with one punch they can knock someone out. But it's just knocking them unconscious. In the case of Musa alayhi salam, with one strike, he was able to kill the person. And so Musa alayhi salam was someone very strong. So Musa alayhi salam, he helps water their flocks. And then after doing so, he doesn't ask for anything from them. And this is a lesson that we must learn as well. When we do something for people, don't expect anything from them. Don't expect gratitude from them. Don't expect a reward for them if you're doing something for the sake of Allah. Instead, ask Allah Azza wa Jal. And so that's what Musa alayhi salam does. He doesn't ask them for any reward. Instead, he seeks a shade that he sees there, and then over there he asks Allah Azza wa Jal. He makes dua to Allah Azza wa Jal. In this time of desperation, he has nothing with him now, no family, he's just there by himself. And he says to Allah, Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khayrin faqir. Oh my Lord, I am in dire need of whatever good you may send down to me. And so he's asking Allah Azza wa Jal for goodness. And now you can imagine Musa alayhi salam, all exhausted, resting there. Now he's got water as well that he drank, and now he's there resting in the shade. And then one of the two women he had helped, she approaches Musa alayhi salam, walking in a very shy manner. And she says to Musa alayhi salam, she says, my father is asking for you because he wants to reward you for watering our flocks for us. And so then Musa alayhi salam, he went to the old man, and then he told him his story, what had happened. He told him about Fir'aun. Fir'aun is someone who oppressed his people. He's someone who killed all these kids. And he also mentions how he had also wanted to kill Musa alayhi salam now, and that he had fled him. And so the man, he responded and said, do not be afraid. You are safe now from those people who had done wrong to you. Because now Musa alayhi salam was far away from the lands of Fir'aun, and so he would be safe there. And so, subhanAllah, in this way, Allah Azza wa Jal offers him the peace of mind. Now at least he's no longer worried about his safety. And then the father continues and says, because his daughters, they had said to their father, they said, we saw what Musa alayhi salam did. He's someone who's very strong. He's someone who's trustworthy. So why don't you use him? Why don't you basically hire him so that he could do this? And they said, the best person that you can hire is al-qawi, the one who has strength or capabilities, al-amin, and the one who you can trust, the trustworthy one. And so, subhanAllah, these are the two requirements that should be there for any job, for any responsibility that there is there. The person has to be capable of doing that job, and the person has to be honest and trustworthy in that role. When you have both of these, then insha'Allah you can ensure that that person will be successful in that role. But if it's someone who's just trustworthy, but he's not capable of doing the task, or she's not capable of doing the task, then you're setting them up for failure. And at the same time, if they're capable of doing stuff, but they're not trustworthy, yes, they might help you, they might be of service to you, but at the same time, they could backstab you, they could work against you as well. So ensuring these two things goes a long way when you are looking for help, when you're looking for service. Ensuring that they have the capabilities to help you, and at the same time ensuring that they are sincere for the sake of, that they are trustworthy, and you can trust them with that which you are tasking them with. And so now the old man, he says to Musa alayhi salam, he says, I would like you to marry one of these daughters of mine on the condition that you serve me for 8 years, and you can even complete 10 years if, out of your own goodness, if it's your own free will, if you choose to do so. And this man, he said something that we should all remember when we employ someone. He said, I do not intend to make things difficult for you. Insha'Allah, you will find me to be a fair person. And so Musa alayhi salam, he agreed to these conditions, and in this way Allah Azza wa Jal, he provided him with a job, he provided him with safety, as well as with a family. After Musa alayhi salam, he had fled his own people, after he had fled the land that he was born and raised in, and now Allah Azza wa Jal, he strengthens him once again, and over we see how it is Allah Azza wa Jal who gives strength to the people, to the believers. Now, after Musa alayhi salam completes his term of 10 years, Musa alayhi salam himself also did more than what was required from him. Instead of doing 8 years of service, he actually did 10 years of service. And after the end of this, Musa alayhi salam, he was traveling with his family, and it was a very cold night. And in the distance, he saw that there was a fire towards a mountain called Mount Tur. So he told his family to remain where they were, and he said, let me go to that fire, because normally if you see a fire in the desert, that means there is someone there. And so if someone's there, he can ask them for directions, he can ask them for help, and perhaps they'll have food and other things that they can help them with. And at the very least, you can get heat, because it was a very cold night, as we had said, and you can also get light. Two things that you need in the desert, because you want to be free from danger, you want to remain safe from danger. There are animals in the desert who roam at night, and so with this fire you can scare them away. And you can also get the heat from this, because as we mentioned, it was a very cold night. And so he tells his family, wait here, I'll bring some news for you from there, or I'll just bring back a burning stick so that we may warm ourselves. So when Musa alayhi salam, he got there, he gets to the fire. Instead of finding people there, he hears a voice. And this voice, the voice tells him to remove his sandals, that he was in a sacred valley called Tuwa. And then the voice continues and says, Ya Musa, O Musa, Inni ana Allah, Rabbul Alameen. Indeed, I am Allah, Lord of the worlds. And so now this is Allah Azza wa Jal talking to Musa alayhi salam. And that is why one of the titles given to Musa alayhi salam is Kalimullah, the one who spoke with Musa alayhi salam. The one who spoke with Allah Azza wa Jal. And as we had mentioned, this is not something that every single prophet or messenger did. And this is something mentioned in the Quran. Allah says, some of them, talking about the messengers, he says some of them Allah Azza wa Jal spoke with, and others he didn't. And so Musa alayhi salam, as we had said, is from the Ulul Azm. He's from the 5 greatest Ulul Azm, those who had conviction and those who were tested in very severe manner. We had mentioned it was Nuh alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And now the voice continues. Allah Azza wa Jal now, he continues a conversation with Prophet Musa alayhi salam, and he says, I have chosen you, so listen to what is being revealed to you. And so the first of revelation was being given to Musa alayhi salam now, which included information about the Day of Judgment, that is a day that is coming, and you shall be rewarded for what you do in this world. And then Allah Azza wa Jal also gave him miracles. What are these miracles? The 2 that were given to him then were, Musa alayhi salam, he used to have a staff, because he used to deal with the flock, with the animals that he would herd. And this is actually something that was also tasked. This was also something that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to do. And so when you herd the animals, it teaches you many things. It teaches you how to take care of someone underneath you. The sheep, They're very helpless. They'll do whatever you tell them to do. They need to be protected from other animals. So you're always looking out for their well-being. And you also learn how to manage them, giving them direction. And so in this way, Allah Azza wa Jal, He trained different prophets and messengers to be leaders in their people by first having them be shepherds with, these animals. They learn patience. They learn, love and how to be soft with the creatures, and then they can do the same with their people as well, guiding them to the truth. And so he used to have a staff with him. And so Allah Azza wa Jal, even though He knows what is in Musa alayhi salam's hand, He says, "What is in your right hand?" Musa alayhi salam, now he's beginning to enjoy the conversation with Allah. Imagine talking to your creator. And so he could have easily just said, "Oh, this is my stick." Instead, he tries to, elongate that conversation. He says, "This is my stick, and this I have this use for the stick, and I do this with it." He's just trying to make the story longer and longer so he could continue talking with Allah Azza wa Jal. And so Allah Azza wa Jal, He tells Musa alayhi salam to let go of his staff, to throw it. And when he does so, it becomes a very great large snake. And this isn't an ordinary snake that you would see. This is a miraculous snake that Allah Azza wa Jal has sent as a sign. And so when this happens, Musa alayhi salam, he starts to run away. He turns away without even turning back to see what's happening. And so Allah Azza wa Jal, He tells him to return to the snake. And He says, just, if you just touch your snake, if you just pick it up again, it's going to turn back into your staff. And so that's what happens. And then He also tells Musa alayhi salam, and put your hand into your jayb, into your, the underarm area, and it's going to come out bright. And this is not an evil thing. Like, normally if you have a different shade, it could be any sort of thing. It might be vitiligo, it might be some skin condition that you have. But this would be something pure, some light that you would see coming out. And then when he would do that again, it would go back to normal. So these were the two signs that Allah Azza wa Jal gives to him. And then He tells Musa alayhi salam, He instructs him and says, "Go to Fir'aun. He has truly become a tyrant. He is someone who is oppressing the people. And so go to Fir'aun now and save the people of Banu Israel. And you have these two signs with you as well." So Musa alayhi salam, he responds back and says to Allah, he says, "I'm a wanted man. I killed a person, and I was a wanted man. I actually fled them over 10 years ago. Now if I go back, I fear for my safety. And at the same time, I also am not the most eloquent of people. So why don't you send my brother Harun with me as well?" So Allah Azza wa Jal also gave prophethood to his brother Harun alayhi salam, and they were instructed to go to Fir'aun and to be use words of lenient words with Fir'aun, to use leniency when addressing Fir'aun. And so they made dua to Allah Azza wa Jal to make things easy for them, and they set out to go meet Fir'aun. Now when they get there, you can imagine Fir'aun, he is the ruler of the people there. He's going to have guards. He's living in his palace, in one of his many palaces. And so when he gets to the gates, the guards, they ask him what he wants. And so he says, "I am Musa." And so tell Fir'aun, "I am Musa and I want to meet him." And so the guards, they get the news to Fir'aun that there is a man by the name of Musa and he wants to come and talk to you. Now Fir'aun, he's surprised. This man, Musa, he killed one of my people and he fled when I was trying to kill him, and now he's come back. So he tells the guards to let him in. And so when Musa alayhi salam, he enters into that gathering of Fir'aun, Fir'aun asks Musa alayhi salam, "What is it that you want?" And then he tells him that it is Allah Azza wa Jal that I call you to worship Him alone. He is your true Lord, not these other gods that you worship. You're not the God, it is actually Allah. So Fir'aun, he starts to remind Musa alayhi salam about the favors that were bestowed upon him by himself, by his people. He raised him up in his household and he spared his life when he could have easily killed him. And so he begins to remind him of the favors, and he also reminds Musa alayhi salam, remember what you had done, reminding him of that individual that he had killed. And so Musa alayhi salam, he acknowledged all those things. Fir'aun over here is trying to distract him away from the main message by trying to get him to feel guilty about the past that he had done. And this is something that we see in our times as well. When we call people to goodness, instead of accepting that goodness, they're going to start reminding us of all the bad things that we had done, as if our history should stop us, or the bad things that we had done in the past should stop us from calling towards goodness now. And that is why the Prophet ﷺ, he has said, "At-ta'ibu min dhanbin kaman la dhanba lah." The one who seeks, seeks forgiveness from a sin, it's as if they don't have that sin anymore, because Allah Azza wa Jal, He forgives for them that sin, and He can even replace that sin with a good deed. And so Musa alayhi salam, he doesn't get distracted. He starts to call him once again to the worship of the one God. And it was actually Fir'aun who used to say, "Ana rabbukum al-a'la." I am your highest and I am your greatest God that you have. And so then Musa alayhi salam, he responded and he said, my Lord is the one who is your Lord as well as your ancestors' Lord. So, you claim to be the Lord, but before you were born, when it was your father and your forefathers, who used to be their God? It wasn't you, because you weren't even alive. And so now, Fir'aun, he starts to get upset. He wants to imprison Musa alayhi salam. How dare he challenge his authority? And so he says, stop what you're saying, otherwise I'm going to imprison you. He doesn't have any more answers. He doesn't have anything to say. And so Musa alayhi salam says, wait. Let me show you the signs that I've come with. How are you going to imprison me? How are you going to stop me from talking if I haven't even shown you the signs that I have been sent with? And so, what are these signs? The same signs that were given to him by Allah Azza wa Jal. He throws his staff down that turns into a mighty snake. And Fir'aun and his people, they get scared and frightened. And then in the same way that it turned into a snake, when he grabs it, it turns back into the staff, Musa alayhi salam's staff. And so now Fir'aun says, oh, you're going to try to deter my people. You're going to try to change their religion through magic? Now there is almost a challenge that he has to respond to. If he doesn't, it might show some weakness on the part of Fir'aun. And so it was the intelligence of Musa alayhi salam that caused him to do what he did. And because of that, now you see that Musa alayhi salam, he is being acknowledged. Now this is a challenge that Fir'aun has to accept. He said, okay, you know what? You think your magic is good. I'm going to call all the magicians that live in this area, and they're all going to come, and we will have a battle. You versus the magic of my magicians. And what we have to realize is Allah Azza wa Jal, He sends miracles to the people that are relevant to them. At the time of Isa alayhi salam, as inshallah we will cover when we talk about the story of Isa alayhi salam, medicine and all these things were really known. And so Isa alayhi salam was sent with the miracles of being able to bring the dead back to life, something their medicine could never do. In fact, even our medicine can't do that. And healing illnesses that they had no medications for, that they thought didn't have any cures. And so Musa alayhi salam, at his time, magicians used to thrive. They used to have a lot of power. And so Allah Azza wa Jal sends Musa alayhi salam with these clear signs. Allah calls these mubin, signs that are clear, and signs that will make things clear as well, in the sense that the truth is from Allah Azza wa Jal. This message is from Allah Azza wa Jal. And so now what Fir'aun says is, okay, I have this challenge for you. I'm going to gather all the magicians that I have in my land, and you bring your magic, and then we're going to have that battle. And so then Musa alayhi salam, he is asked, when do you want to do this? Musa alayhi salam, he says, let's do this Yawm az-Zina, on a day where it's a day of celebration. So a lot of people will be gathered there anyways, from Banu Israel, from his own people, as well as from the people of Fir'aun. And in this way, more and more people will be present to see the miracle that Musa alayhi salam had been sent with, and they would have to accept the truth. And so Musa alayhi salam, he says, with the condition that you also gather all the people there at a specific time, the time of duha, when everyone is awake, when everyone is present, and they can all see the truth in front of them. And so that is what happens. And now the magicians, they're there gathered, great in number, and Musa alayhi salam is there with Harun alayhi salam. And insha'Allah, we will continue the story of what happens after this, insha'Allah, in the following episode. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to allow us to benefit from the stories that we hear from the Quran. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to allow us to connect our hearts to Allah Azza wa Jal and always ask Him, no matter what weak a state we might find ourselves in, we turn to Allah Azza wa Jal for help. And we also realize that all these are actually signs pointing to the truth. In reality, we don't need these signs to accept the truth. The truth is self-evident. But when we ignore the self-evident truth, then Allah Azza wa Jal also sends or shows different signs through which it is hoped that insha'Allah people will accept the truth. And so we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to show us the truth and guide us to it and to keep us on that truth. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make us from the people who will be with the prophets and with the messengers and with the greatest of people in Jannah. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.